Millions of people, all just flesh and bones, misled by talking heads on golden thrones, hiding behind stained glass while they're throwing stones. I'm trying to hold on to love. I'm trying to hold on to love. The world is burning, but your heart is on your...
Oh, welcome back, Douglas Vass Jr. Great to see you. Welcome back, Georgie, Jessup, and
thank you.
And Faith Miller, welcome back. It's wonderful to have you all here with us again. Thank you.
It's good to be here on a snowy day here in Maryland. Well, it's not snowing, but
the aftermath.
Yeah.
Well, it's been quite cold here, like below zero, and so we're enjoying the cold. We've been talking so much about Snow Owl, but Faith, we didn't talk about his sense of humor. And I was wondering if you could share a little bit about some of those T-shirts that he wore, and anything else you might want to share about his sense of humor.
Snow had a very dry sense of humor, and I'm going to say a sneaky sense of humor. He would wear humorous shirts that he wouldn't call attention to, but if you saw them and got them, you would walk away laughing. He used to have this one shirt that he'd wear occasionally on Sundays that had a picture of a man in a splint basket. And in the top of the shirt, it said, "Why am I in this basket?" And then under the basket, it said, "And where are we going?"
Well,
yes.
That's
in a handbasket, no less. Yes.
Yeah. That's a good one. That's a good one. Georgie, you had a favorite shirt as well that he wore.
Well, he wore the one that is in the video. What the heck does that say? Wait a minute. I can't remember what it says now.
It's something about, I'm white, but I can't prove it.
Oh, yeah. I'm part white, but I can't prove it.
Yeah.
And I think that was in response to, all the proving your bloodline and that goes on in Native community. And, okay, I get it. But, to me, it's about spirit. And I think he recognized that. And so he kind of made fun of it. But it's also the government that demanded certain blood quantum, in order to get status as a, independent nation type thing, too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Douglas, do you have any examples of Snow's sense of humor?
Yeah. One day out of nowhere, as he walks in, we were at a powwow, and he walks up to me and he goes, Badgers? We don't need no stinking badgers. And that was just out of nowhere. And that's just the kind of, brain he had. Come up with stuff off the top of his head faster than I could even think. And he did a lot. Some I can't even say in one line, but it was just, that was Snow. He'd make you laugh,
Yeah.
He was quick on his feet.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Georgie, you wrote an introduction one time.
I did.
Would you want to share that with us? Kind of give our listeners a little
Snow
background?
got to call on our little, I don't know what you would call it, our little group of people that always followed each other to the different powwows for different functions and stuff. And Faith was always a part of that, for sure. And there was a lot of other people that was in that. So when I would perform, I would go on when the dancers needed a break in the afternoon, get some lunch or whatever they needed to do. And that's when I would perform. And sometimes that worked out great. Other times there was like, where's everybody? But so when Snow would come back to, start emceeing again, I had a little thing I did, and it was my introduction for Snow Owl. So it is my honor to introduce to you the man who put the owl in the howl, the bird with the biggest herd, the feathered one with the most fun, the raptor with the laughter. I give you Wazon Le Coco Cohas. Here's Snow Owl.
Nice.
That's a good one, Georgie. That's so beautiful. Thank you, for performing that for us, actually.
you're welcome.
Yeah.
I'm no Ed McMahon, but
Yeah.
I don't get paid what he gets paid or got paid.
No.
Well, do you have any questions for these folks, Rick?
Well, I'd like to say welcome back. I enjoy seeing you folks here, and I'm enjoying following the Odyssey of Snow Owl.
Yeah.
Thank you. We enjoy being here.
Oh, yeah.
It's a great story. And, I think I felt after the first couple interviews, it's left us on the red road. And I wanted to talk about that a little bit more. And I think you all probably have something to say about that. Douglas, do you want to talk about a little bit of your journey?
Yeah, I mean, my journey, it's kind of mixed in with Ron. When I was in college, I was having these dreams of a deer. And we would go to a lot of vet things, me and Ron. We would go down to D.C. almost every year for the wall. In fact, we were down there more than once a year with the fire base also. And I'd get around full bloods, and I keep telling them this deer dream. And we were at this one party one time. DMZ the Delta Dance was what it was. So me and Ron are standing there, and I've got a drink in my hand, and I see this full blood. I walk up to the full blood, and you got to remember, this was before we were actually walking the road. And I got my Jack Daniels and Coke, and I start telling the full blood this dream, because I'm trying to figure it out. It's been bugging me for years now. And the full blood looks me right in the eye and goes, until you put that drink down, brother, you're not going to understand what grandfather's trying to tell you, but he's trying to talk to you. And I can remember turning back to Ron and going, well, what do you say? And I told Ron, he goes, so what are you going to do? I said, well, I guess it's not going to be right now. And just went on to, drinking and partying. But when I did get on the road, it was like really a slow process in a sense, trying to find the right people. Ron kept trying to find me Cherokee people to teach. And most of the people he found that said they were, quote, quote, holy men, within 5 minutes of sit with them, I was done. Because what was coming out of their mouth didn't sound even the remote of anything I want to be part of. And it took me a long time until I found the Sweat Lodge, and then got around some people where I really started seeing some real holy people. I mean, I've been lucky. Georgie will tell you, Wobbly Gleshka Chikila, a little spotted eagle, Julie running. That was the one that we went to the first Sundance together and met him. Man, Grandpa Joe Flying By, Grandpa Grassroots. These are people that I started realizing had the knowledge I was seeking, and that was thing. And that's probably some of the reasons Georgie will tell you that Ron kind of joked about the Lakota, because I couldn't find a Cherokee person that had any of the old ways. But I could find Lakota people that did.
Did he send you to Raven Horse?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had my experience with, well, I didn't even know the guy, but He was at a powwow that Snow and what was his name? Little Hawk?
Yeah.
Yeah, Snow and Little Hawk were doing down in Damascus,
Oh, yeah.
Virginia. And I showed up, and it was my second powwow that I was doing. And my manager and I set up a TP, and we were in the TP and everything. And the guy scratched on the door, a bear with no tail. I don't know if you knew him.
Yeah.
And so we let him in, and he brought me some tobacco, and I think he brought me a turtle rattle. And he said, "I got to apologize to you." And I said, "What the hell you got to apologize to me for?" And he said, "Did you see all the people that were leaving?" And I said, "Well, we kind of noticed that a lot of people were leaving." And he said, "Well, I was with that group, and it was Raven Horse's group."
Okay.
And the next day I talked to Snow and Little Hawk about it. I said, "What was up with that?" He said, "Oh, well, he said that the powwow grounds were going to have to be
I remember that.
have to be saged and I don't know, some ceremony for 7 years in order to make it whole, because I was off balance, and if I was going to be here, then he had to leave."
Ugh.
And Snow didn't miss a beat. He just said, "Well, brother, we think you bring a lot to the people. We hate to see you leave."
Yeah. But I think that was the second year at Damascus, because I think the first year was the first time Ron actually emceed. And he called me up on the panic because they wanted him to MC. And I said, "Ron, you could do this. If anybody I know could be a good MC, it would be you, you know." But I remember that, him coming to me telling me that, and I just kind of went, "Well, sorry to see him go, but hey, they're welcome, welcome to go. We don't need them, And we really didn't. The powwow went on fine. And I think that, if I'm not mistaken, that was the last year in Damascus.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the last year in Damascus.
I shut it down.
No, you didn't shut it down. There were some other problems that went on. Little Hawk, I think, owed local grocer some money and never paid it up, stuff like that. So they weren't welcome back after that.
But that was one of the kind of points of contentions that Snow and I ever had, because I think within a year or two, Raven Horse was back, and Snow was treating him like his long lost buddy and everything. And I was like, "Snow, man, I think that he should bring it. If he's saying I'm out of balance and that I'm the problem, and that I'm a disrespecting native ways or something, then he should bring me in front of the people and let the people decide." And that never happened, but that's what I felt about it.
That was one of the kind of people that when Snow brought him, he was supposed to be a Cherokee holy man.
Yeah.
And this is shortly after I was sweating with Lakotas and stuff. And 5 minutes of him talking, I was like, I just want to get away from him, because nothing he's saying is making any sense.
Yeah.
It doesn't even sound anything close to anything I've even seen from the Cherokee or Lakota. So you're making it up. The way I looked at it, he was making it up as going on because he wanted to be something that he wasn't.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately,
that's the way I saw him too. But
there's a lot.
What do I know?
I mean, I bet your face saw a lot of that too, where people were playing and who they were.
There's a tremendous amount of that.
Yeah. Ron would catch him every once in a while, that's for sure. Ron was good at that. He'd start weeding them out. He'd trust them for a little bit, and then go, "I'm not sure about this guy." And that's sad, because when people are searching and trying to get, I go back to something when I was put on the hill, and my Uncle John put me on the hill. I went out to Fort Peck, Montana. That's where I did my humblation. And I can remember coming down off the hill where my uncle gave me rights to do ceremony. And we were talking at the end, and Uncle John said something that I've carried with me forever. You'll know in your heart when someone's telling you the truth. Always live by that. And from that point on, I would have been able to go, okay, wait a minute. That's crap. This is true. And once you get to that point, and you start listening to spirits and they start talking to you, then you start understanding that this way is as viable as any other way that there is. You know, it's not the one thing I can say about this way. It's not the only way. I don't believe it is. I don't believe our people felt that. It was their way, and their way, they wanted to keep it alive. And they went up until the 70s to do a sweat lodge. You could have been charged with $10,000 and put in jail for a year.
Yeah.
And we're talking, we didn't have the Freedom of Religion Act for us as Native until the 70s.
1978.
Yep. All these ceremonies that we see now, the sweat lodge, the sun dances, all these things, the flesh offerings, all these things that's happening right now have always been happening, but they had to be underground. They had to be hidden.
Yes.
You know, because if we'd have got caught doing them, we'd have been in trouble. And it's the sad part. It's every tribe needs to find their way back to the old ways. And I believe that Ron believed that, you know, that he was trying everything he could to make sure that he was heading back in a way that the Abenaki did. Not anybody other tribal people, but the Abenaki. And there was nothing wrong with that. I was always glad that he was doing that because he was trying to save what he could of things that's been lost. And I mean, it's through all the tribes. You know, like when you have somebody like Raven was thinking Georgie was out of bounds, he didn't know his own history. We don't have one species in the Native thing. We don't just have male and female.
Well, it's also something like with the Cherokee in particular, because they were so Christianized.
Oh yeah.
During that whole period, and so my understanding is that they claim that there was no tradition like the Winkte or the Two Spirit or whatever term you want to use, but it's because they were Christianized. It's like Faith has often pointed out to me a lot of the creation stories, like you can see where there's the Christian influence in those creation stories, right, Faith?
Yes, because if you look at almost all creation stories from earth-based people, which the Native people are, the people come from the earth. They literally, some of them crawl out from under rocks. But once you get, especially from the East Coast, you get you see the influence in where the people come from. Now the Cherokee are an exception because they are the star people.
Seven sisters.
Yep. The Cherokee are the exception. They are the star people. And I shouldn't say they are the exception. They're the exception I know. Let me put it that way. I don't know all. They're the exception I know. I don't want anybody upset because I left them out.
Yeah.
But yeah, you see a lot of that.
And when you actually look at the names too, of the tribal names, most of the time it's the people, principal people, that's what the names always meant. It wasn't like it is. Like, Cherokee isn't our real name. It's Salagi. That's the real name of the Cherokee. Lakota, what we call the Sioux is Lakota. That was a name given to them by the Crown, the Sioux. So, sometimes we get lost in the fact of what the name of the actual tribal people are. And that's important to keep alive, no matter how many generations behind us it is. Because, I'll go with what Wilma Melchior said at one point. If you have one drop of Indian blood in you, you're Indian. And I believe that's the way it should be. Because in the old days, if I'd have came up there with the Abenaki and fought and hunted with the Abenaki, I'd have been considered an Abenaki. We didn't judge where you came from. We judged what you did for the tribe. if I was going to be there and work for the tribe and hunt and make sure that the elders and the children were taken care of, I'd be part of that tribe, no matter where that tribe is. And that's tradition I think we've lost because of this blood quotum thing. We need to get rid of it because that was set up to get rid of us, period.
Yeah.
You can actually bleed us out so we don't have enough blood to be it. You know, I've always said, tomorrow, if I could get into the Cherokee Nation, I still can't have a clan. My mother's not Cherokee. To be in a clan in the Cherokee Nation, it has to be passed down through the matriarchal society, not the patriarchal society. So because my mother's was only second generation born American, I can't never have a clan, period. No matter how much Cherokee blood I've got mixed in there, I'm never going to have a clan. And that's just the way the tribe was set up, years ago. Not wrong, just what it is. And it's the one thing that I was so proud of Ron. Once he got tagged in with the Abenaki, that's what he started doing. He started learning more about his people. And even though I do a lot of Lakota stuff, I had to learn a lot about who the Cherokee were, how we got to where we are now, And there's a sadness there when you really look at what happened to us, because a lot of people don't realize before they sent us out to Oklahoma, the Senate, and they were actually told that they couldn't do it. And it was Jackson said, if you want to enforce this, you have to enforce it because I ain't. They're going to go to Oklahoma. So they took us from the lands that was our land.
And they, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, that's it.
Well, I mean, and the Cherokee too were a prime example of really when racism for the sense of race kicked in, because they did everything they could to be like the white culture. They had courts, they had schools, they had their own language, they had, anything you can think of that relates to the European Christian way. They had churches, they had courthouses, trials, and the whole 9 yards. And yet, in the end, it was like, well, you're Indian, so we're just going to shuffle you off to Oklahoma and see how you do. And by the way, you're going to lose a third of your people on the way.
Now, I know when we were up for the fish trials, my wife at the time was going through some of the paperwork. They were getting ready for the trial. She was happy to read it. And she saw a piece in 1938, I think it was, where military trucks came into Swanton and a bunch of Abenaki people were loaded into it and they were gone and nobody knows whatever happened to them. They were just moved out. And when you see that, and it's not just one group. I mean, I don't know if any of you guys have seen Sugar Cane yet.
Yes.
That will break your heart.
It does.
This is what we did. We sent them to these supposed to be to help them, and we destroyed them. And that's just one reservation they're talking about.
Yeah.
There was 139 reservations in Canada, 523 here in the United States. I know that one year we took, and this is early 90s, we went to Carlisle. We asked permission because the Army still had control of it. We had permission to go to the graveyard. And it was just before Halloween. We got to that graveyard and we saw those names. And our hearts broke because these are children in this graveyard. We took a drum and we sang, of course, the only songs we knew at the time were Lakota, and that was the songs we sang. But we wanted to hear them to hear the language, to know that they had not been forgotten. And one of the things we did was place candy on each of the grave sites.
Mm.
You know, so when I found out they were taking these kids home finally from that place, was the most nicest thing that I could ever have helped for, because it hurt to realize, how do you explain all these grave sites? And that's the one we know of. How many of them that we don't know of?
Right. There was when I was up there, the whole back row was unknown, 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 unknown. And that just broke my heart completely.
And what people don't realize, part of that was, if you had a farm during the summertime, when school was supposed to be out, you could actually hire some of these kids. So how many of these kids were sent out to farmers and maybe died and just got buried in? It's like, no big deal.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah, when we talk, I hear this, let's make America great again. America is not going to be great till it stand up and admit to the wrongs that we've done.
Yeah.
You know? That's when it's going to be great, because what it's done to the Native people it's just wrong. I mean, Georgie's first album, she kind of hit on it right away. American Holocaust. Their job was to get rid of us so that they could take over the land, not have to feel guilty about it. And they still don't feel guilty about it, because I still remember when the Lenape were trying just to get state recognition here in New Jersey, and Trump got up there to make sure to tell everybody they don't look Indian to me.
Yeah.
You know, so I don't forget stuff like that. That sticks with me. You know, because
and him standing in front of Mount Rushmore for political posturing was a complete insult. And there were people protesting that, but you didn't hear that on the news.
No, because basically everybody forgets that they called that the seven grandfathers there before they tore it apart, put those white people's heads up there. That was a sacred spot, but we don't care. You know, we don't care. I can remember, I grew up in an old town called Pettertown, and I look backwards now as a child. I used to have an imaginary friend named Poga, and I'd make my mom make a dish for dinner. About 1975, I want to say. You could go there was a field right behind my grandparents' house. And it was a big field. And you could go out there and find arrowheads. Well, the reason was that was an Indian burial ground right behind my grandparents' house. We never knew it, but it was always there. So I often look back and go, was Pogo really my imagination? Or was I dealing as a child? Because as a child, you're in between two worlds.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Even
wow.
Then, you know?
Yeah.
And that's what I say. I think when we talk about the Red Road, we need to start looking back and picking up where the things that our ancestors did, and teach our younger ones. I mean, this has been the thing here. We kept waiting for young people to come to learn how to run the sweat lodges so they could take over. There's no sweat lodges here anymore. The young people just didn't want to take the time to devote themselves. And we need, especially tribal people, we need to try to get our tribal youth involved, more than just powwow.
Yeah.
That's nice. But there's a spiritual side to this that we need to get back in and touch.
Yes.
And I think that's the biggest thing. I think that's what I kind of got from Homer, what Homer was headed. I mean, he wanted his people to take back what had been taken from them, you know. And I got a feeling that was Ron's kind of quest too, because, you know, he had that kind of a strength about him that if you knew Ron, once you got to know him, you trusted him. You know, and that was just Ron. I mean, I don't know many people that ever met him that didn't trust him. You know.
I know. I mean, I have people that that when he was up visiting me, that he met briefly, and they still talk about him. That's the kind of impact that he had.
Mhm.
But Georgie, I don't know if you've mentioned it, but didn't he call you his second wife?
No, third wife.
Third wife.
Yeah, I was insulted. And he wanted to make me his third wife, as he offered that to me, and I said, "No." I said, "Me and Heidi are going to butt heads from the get-go. It's going to bring turmoil to your lodge. You do not want me as a third wife." So it never happened,
Yeah.
but I appreciated it.
I wanted to get back to Faith, and I want to hear her contribution here. You helped organize powwows. You did a lot of making sure certain protocols were followed. Was this something that Snow guided you on?
After a while, not at first. The first powwow I organized, actually, Snow came to as a food vendor.
Uh-huh.
And we became friends. And the first powwow he ever emceed was Halifax, which was our main powwow that we organized. And yes, then his input, his knowledge helped us along the way. I mean, he was a very knowledgeable person, and that was one thing that made him such a great MC, was because he would share that knowledge as things would come up and things would happen throughout the powwow. And people would come through with interesting regalia and interesting dances and that kind of thing. He had no problem sharing his knowledge. And he had very interesting ways of doing it. And the same with going around and to the different vendors. He didn't just stand up there with the drums and MC from there. While the dancers were dancing, he'd go out and he'd walk around and he'd go into a vendor's booth. And he would look at their wares, and then he would say something about them before the drums started the next song, and then go to the next vendor. And he would make his way through the powwow talking about how things were made and what things were for and that kind of thing. That he just was a very knowledgeable person, and he had no problem sharing it and keeping people interested while he did.
Yeah, that's fantastic. We're going to run out of time again, but we have, we do have like, I think 6 or 7 minutes here left, but for a couple Snow Owl short stories, Georgie, do you have anything that you'd like our listeners and viewers to take away today?
Oh man. I mean, there's so many, it's hard to just think of one, but I mean, the thing that I just loved was Faith used to work with a woman named Rain Bear. She's crossed over now. But Rain Bear was the face of the powwows. Everybody thought she ran them, and then later I found out it was Faith who really put them together and did the legwork. But for some reason, she decided that everybody was out to get her. And so one day, me and Snow and I guess Faith and Ken, her husband Ken, were there. And Ken has a very similar humor to Snow Owls. And we were all in the room, and we were talking about how, I think Snow's the one that said it. He said, "Yep, old something bear, she got rain bared, and I haven't seen so and so at the powwow. Well, she got rain bared." And so then I think I reached back and I stole the song Branded, and we wrote a whole song to that together. And I mean, we were laughing, and I think that's one of my favorite times with him. Besides, we traveled to Milwaukee for the Indian Summer Music Awards. And he rode with me. So the two of us drove across country together, and that was just, it was a hoot. We listened to Even Cowgirls Get the Blues on video. On audio the whole way. And I think we finished it on the way back. And he became in that book, if you don't know about it, there's a character called the Chink, and Snow became the Chink, and he really was like that character. I mean, I dare anybody that knew him to read that book and not say, yeah, that's Snow Owl. And he just had a great sense of humor.
Beautiful. Douglas, do you have a short story to share?
I'm trying to think of which one. I've got so many without. I mean, because you got a picture. It was like probably four or 5 years before we started walking the road together. That one thing together. But it's like Georgie says, without you just never knew what was going to come, But when he started emceeing, you could see a change in him. You could see he got deeper and deeper in who he was as a Native person. Because like I said in the beginning, he told me he was a San Francisco Indian, and then he found out that San Francisco Indians were really Abenaki. And from that point on, it was like he started making that path to learn more and more about his people, so that he could share about his people. Of course, I used to always tease him, ask him if all the Abenakis were as short as he is, because Ron was short in stature, but he was big in heart. That's the one thing I can say about him. His heart was huge,
Yeah. I remember too, Faith, do you have anything to add? Because I don't want to take up all the time. But
just that year we stayed at the Blue House for, I can't remember why we were down there, but we stayed in the Blue House, Heidi and Snow and Ken and I, and there was a pair of matching recliners with a table between them, and Ken and Snow were each sitting in a recliner, and they were talking, and they both fell asleep, and they spent the afternoon napping. And Snow would say Ken was the only man that he ever slept with. I mean, you just
Yeah.
Well, the one thing that I thought of while I was talking about, everybody's talking about all this, was after he died, I don't know whether Faith and Doug remember this, but after he died, a white owl showed up on top of one of the monuments in Washington, D.C. And I forget what was going on, but it was pretty significant that he was there. And
Yep.
You remember that, Faith?
Yes, I do. I remember the white owl, but I don't remember what else was going on. But it felt like a sign. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh. It's really been wonderful talking to you all about Snow Owl. I want to thank you for your stories.
To myself, can we change this madness and heal the human race? It's happened since the white man ran over this place. Talk with 7 arrows, learn the wisdom of the way, understand the circle, live it